nervous?
Not. I don't really get nervous anymore.
Okay.
The life has kind of taken off the nerves for me. So cool. We'll just do a quick introduction. So I'm Matthew Mercer. I'm a graduate student here at Wright State, and we are interviewing Kathy Simpson for the Dayton Music History Project. So if you just want to tell us a little bit of a brief personal background. You were born in Dayton.
No, I was actually born in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. This is probably before your time, but one thing it's well known for is the river being so polluted it caught on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Not once, but evidently several times. I was born there in 1952. That makes me 66. Was born to, actually my father was a minister, which makes my mother a minister's wife. He had a church in Cuyahoga Falls, Grace Brethren Church, and we moved to Dayton, I think I was 12, when he took a church in the Dayton area. And that was kind of my musical beginning, was singing and playing piano in church. And from as young as I can remember, standing on a little step stool, and my parents both sang. And she played piano and organ in church. So that was kind of the musical beginning, was singing with them in a little trio. And
Yeah. So would you say that the overall kind of choir aspect of going to church was really what sparked your overall interest in music?
Oh, I think so, because even, when my mom was pregnant with me, I was hearing, if you believe that kind of thing, music from the womb, as she sang and played in church. And I just think there was 9 months of that before he popped out. And then it was right into church with music.
Nice. So were your parents from around the Cuyahoga region, or did they?
Actually, my dad was from Long Beach, California. My mother was from a little town close to that area called Hartville, Ohio. Mm-hmm. My mother was one of 8 children. My father was an only child. So that was kind of interesting. I don't even really know how they met, other than I believe he was preaching in the area, and that's how they met.
Do you know if they had any certain genres of music that they were interested in?
It was just Christian music.
Just Christian music all the time.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Is anyone else in your family really big into music?
My sisters have a really strong musical ability, but they never pursued it. And they're artistic in other ways. I mean, they're good artists as well. My one niece pursued music for a while, and then she had got a family and babies, but they're all somewhat musical.
So what was the first album that you bought?
Well, I was thinking about that. And the backstory on that is growing up in a religious home, movies, music, makeup, dancing, forbidden. Mm-hmm. It was very strict. But I was allowed to play piano, and I was allowed to sing and play in church. So there weren't any albums until later on. I discovered a guitar in my uncle's closet somewhere around being 12 years old, and it was a beat-up guitar that had 2 strings on it. And I was mesmerized, and from that moment on, I wanted a guitar. Mm-hmm. Well, that wasn't going to happen in my family. But believe it or not, when I turned, I think, 14, they broke down and got me a guitar. And about the same time, even though I wasn't allowed to listen to music, I sent away and I got this little transistor radio that's shaped like a rocket. Mm-hmm. And the nose cone was the antenna. And you lift it up and down to get different stations. And it came with a little earphone or earplug. It's not even an earbud. It was one of those things, mono signal at the time. You stick in your ear so you could listen to it. And after dark, when we were supposed to be in bed asleep. I shared a bedroom with my sister. I'd get that little rocket radio thing and stick the home plug, and I'd listen to WING. Do you know WING?
Do not.
1410. That was the station in Dayton to listen to for rock music. And then I also discovered that if I put an alligator clip on the antenna and also on one of the screws for a power outlet, you could draw in more channels. But I always came back to WING. When things kind of got a little bit more accepting around the house with music, I remember buying albums by Lou Christie. I remember buying, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced, was one that I listened to, and I thought, God, he's depressing. But it was like a variety of music. When I listened to WING, that's what they played, was a variety of music. Of course, I bought more albums after that, but it was kind of a slow acceptance from being so strict.
Was there anything in particular that you can remember that really kind of caused that shift in acceptance?
I think it was just very, very slow transition. When I was a sophomore in high school, I was invited by, and I'm not really sure whether it was the Board of Education, but there was an organization in Dayton that went to area high schools and took 2 students who were capable of getting really good grades but weren't motivated to do so. And they put us in a project called Project Motivation, where we stayed down at UD for the summer, and we took classes, and the idea behind it was motivate you to dig in, get good grades, and go to college, because most of us were kind of like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So during that summer, and a lot of the kids were musically trained, or they were really into music. So we do these talent shows. And during the whole summer, our parents, we weren't allowed to have any contact with other parents, or our parents or our friends. But they were allowed to come down for this one talent show we put on. And I remember that night because my mother and father seemed surprised that not only were we like singing and playing guitars and playing piano and having a good time, but the people were really appreciating it. I think if there was a turning point, that might have been it.
So, what were the first concerts that you went to? I know you said that you were really into the whole ministry aspects of it, so I guess you can count those as a type of concert. But what would you say, like the first, like overall bands or musicians that you went to go see?
Right after I got out of high school, or pretty soon after that, I joined a rock band around Dayton that was pretty well known called Hot Spin. And they used to go to Hare Arena when the bands were coming in for a concert and act as roadies and help them set up equipment. This is long before, all the security and everything now. But they'd wait at the back load-in ramp till the big trucks pulled in, and they'd offer to help load in, and 9 times out of 10 they were allowed to do it. Well, I wanted to do it, but they said, you can't, you're a girl. They won't let us do it if you come along with us. I said, what about if I dress up as a guy? So we tried it, and it worked. So that was my first concert experience, was meeting the bands, watching them do sound checks. We actually got to get in, for free because we helped. I can't remember all the bands we did it for, but we did it for Rare Earth. We did it for the Jimmy Castor Bunch. We did it for Grand Funk Railroad. There were several others, but those were kind of the first concerts I got in to see.
Was there any one of those concerts where you just remember seeing them and being like, all right, this is what I want to do
Oh, yeah.
in my career? Which one do you say?
Oh, all of them,
All
because they're there and they're doing what they loved, and you know, in front of a big crowd that was loving it, and I thought, yeah, this is pretty neat.
All right. So after you were able to kind of get more leniency at home, were you able to actually take lessons besides through the UD program?
I actually started at Wright State in music education, and at that point I thought, you know, I think I can make a living at this. And my mom said, you're never going to make a living at it. And I said, well, let me try. So I quit Wright State and went right into playing. At that time, it was around 1970. And started playing coffee houses and little rock bands. But once I got into the supper clubs, which we don't have any of those anymore, but used to be clubs like Anarino's, Sup Miller's, the Tropics, the Colony Club. We worked, this is no kidding, and people don't understand how we did this back then, but 6 nights a week, 5 hours a night we played. Mm-hmm. And it definitely was a living. And a lot of the people probably that you interviewed from the 60s or 70s, you know, were doing that. We actually made a living. Did that for a long time. What was your question? Oh, I forgot. Let's look at our notes. Because I kind of...
I think it was did you take lessons?
Oh, did I take lessons? Well, I kind of went a long way off of that.
You're allowed to go wherever you want with it.
So while I was at Anarino Supper Club, I found out about a gentleman who lived up in Covington, Ohio. His name was Herb Idemiller. And Herb was from the area, but he had moved to New York, where he was a conductor, he was a voice instructor, he worked with people like Edie Gourmet, Dionne Warwick, a bunch of people like that. He's very well known. Well, he and his wife lived up in New York, and he also worked with a lot of the big bands. His wife got ill, so they decided to move back to Covington, Ohio. Bad for him, but good for me, because I found out about him, and I got the opportunity to go up and study with him for probably a year before he passed away. So those were the lessons I took was from him.
So on here, so a lot of these questions are definitely more kind of, some of them are focused more on the impact in the 60s, but the one that I find to be kind of overarching is the impact of the Beatles in music in the U.S. especially. Did you see any like real cultural impacts, like not only growing up but during your music career, of the impact of the Beatles and bands like that?
Well, for me, not so much, but I think that kind of question has to do with your perspective as a musician at the time of what you were in. Not being in the 60s, I was involved in the rock scene back then as much as some of the people you talk to. I came more from the 70s, the folk era, coffee houses. Wright State had a coffee house. UD had a coffee house in the basement of Frisch's on Stewart. This is where we kind of started. And I guess the Beatles were popular then, but as folk artists playing the coffee houses, we didn't perform a lot of that music. Mm-hmm. It was more like Peter, Paul and Mary, Joan Baez, John Prine, Bob Dylan, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the difference from where I was.
Mm-hmm. So what was the first band that you
Kitty and the Dewdrops.
Kitty and the Dewdrops.
That was in the 7th grade, yes.
What was your genre?
I don't know that we had one. You know, back then it was like your girlfriend's in elementary school. Do you want to be in a band? Mm-hmm. I got an idea. We'll be Kitty and the Dewdrops. So of course it didn't last or anything, but you're always looking for somebody to put a band together. And it didn't matter if they played anything, if they could hold a tambourine or that kind of thing. But yeah, Kitty and the Dewdrops was it.
How did you come up with that name?
I was Kitty. They were the Dewdrops.
They were the Dewdrops?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And so, what was like your first, you say, career band? Let's say.
Well, I would say the first band that I played in where we did a lot of jobs was probably Hot Spit, which became Sky King, which became Zsa Zsa. That was early on, and it was a rock band, and we did a lot of Battle of the Bands and played a lot of high school proms and after proms and that kind of thing. So we worked really steady, and then it just kind of went on from there.
Mm-hmm. So when you started playing music, did you do more cover music, or was it basically just write your own?
Well, I was writing back then, but people didn't want to hear original music when we went out. They wanted to hear cover songs. So it's pretty much been that. I don't think I've ever been in a band where we did nothing but covers.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's your?
Originals.
Yeah. What's your favorite song to cover? Or top 10, if you had to get
Top 10. Well, Joni Mitchell I love to cover. She was a big influence. I listened to a lot of Joni Mitchell. In different bands, it was different things. I was in a Moody Blues tribute band. I loved playing that music. It was challenging because there's so much going on. I love the Fleetwood Mac tribute band. I love doing those songs. It's hard to choose, and I think you have to really kind of like anything that you're involved in, or you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, it's understandable. So what songs? Oh yeah.
Spit out my gum.
Oh, yeah, no
okay.
problem.
Thank
you. I've got a trash can over here.
That's all right. I'll put it back in.
That's all right. So what song or songs would you say you were most known for from your career?
Well, probably an original song I wrote called Stoned Kitties.
Mm-hmm.
It was on my album that I released in 1980, which was all originals. It's the song I spent the least time on, but it got the most airplay, and I still get requests for it, and I still perform it, and people still sing along with it. Yeah, Stoned Kitties.
Stoned Kitties.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll have to give that a listen after this.
Yes.
So during a performance, what was your usual go-to closer song?
Well, again, it depends on the band. We have certain closers for the tribute bands. And the other bands, it kind of depends on, you try and read the audience and base it that way. Sometimes it's something that's planned, sometimes it's something that you just pick because you think it would be a good closer. If it's a quiet concert, it would be different than one of the rock bands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Freebird!
Yeah, there's always that one guy. So building off of that as well, so if you were to do an encore for performance, did you have like a set list of songs that you would perform? Like for
Well, the Fleetwood Dreams band has a set list, show list, and we follow that, and then we get up to a certain point, and we have a song that we kind of hold back as the encore that we really like. So we'll get done with the concert and we'll wait and see how loud they're clapping and cheering and calling, hoping they call us back for the encore. And if that doesn't happen, then one of us will pop our head around and goes, "Don't you want to know?"
So is there, for like a performance like that, there is like a set, like for when I go to concerts now, like it's kind of just a play. So I'm like, all right, if we clap loud, they'll do an encore, but
Right.
like they always come back.
Oh, yeah.
Was there ever times that you just didn't?
Yeah, when we played an encore and they wanted a second one and we were out of songs,
Yeah.
then we didn't come back.
It's like, we're done.
Yeah, about the only time we do encores is, well, sometimes it happens with the smaller groups. But,
How would you describe just the environment when that's like just finish the set, you just close out, and like you're waiting to start the encore, and you just hear the crowd is going crazy. Could you describe how the feeling?
it's pretty good because they enjoyed your performance and they don't want it to stop. Yeah, that's a pretty nice feeling. And then also you feel like the people that hired you, that they're seeing that you did a good job. And the crowd that came in to see you, who either paid or, you know, they feel like they've done the right thing by hiring you. So it's good all the way around to get an encore. Keep that in mind.
Are there, I know you've done countless shows, but are there any encores in particular that stand out the most, that were like the greatest?
We had a really good show down in Boone County, Kentucky, 2 years ago. Fleetwood Dreams did. And I think they expected 500 people to come. And it turned out to be perfect. The weather was perfect. It was outdoors and very nice sound system. And we ended up having, I think, about 2,000 people. And it was great because the people were singing along. And that's always a cool thing, too, when you're performing songs and people are singing along. They sang along, they really enjoyed it, and we did an encore there. And I think that was probably the coolest because of the large amount of people and good concert.
Nice. So, did you have any local airplay when you started out?
Well, I did when I did the album in 1980. I don't know the radio stations that did it, but like I said, Stone Kitty's got the most airplay, and still from time to time it'll pop up on WYSO.
Love it.
In fact, my husband and I, it's been maybe 5 years ago now, we were doing some work around the house, and all of a sudden we heard Stone Kitty's and thought, well, where was that coming from? And it was the radio, and it was WYSO. My most recent CD, not so much, but things are different now. You have Reverb or Reverb Nation or whatever it's called, and Spotify and all those things where you can, do your videos and MP3s and stuff. So they're listed all on there.
Yeah. Cool. So how did you go about booking gigs? Did you have a manager? Did someone in the band take care of it?
Back in early days, we kind of, in the rock bands, we just kind of had one guy maybe, or all of us that would contact somebody. I don't remember exactly how we got the gigs planned for the high schools and all that. And then it kind of went on to, there were several agents around town that would book you. They'd get like a circuit going, Holiday Inn circuits, supper clubs, and they'd have so many groups, and you just kind of like rotate. That was sweet because we were working all the time then. So we did through agents for a while, and then it kind of got to the point where disco. Do you know that term?
Yes, and I know all about disco. Right.
Disco kind of took over, and a lot of the clubs switched to disco and put us out of work. Not out of work, but it really cut into our gigs. And now it's kind of like we don't work through agencies anymore. We haven't done that for a while. I think the bands go in and we play, and there are several clubs around town where we play, and then they invite you back, and you just kind of book your gigs like that.
So, what clubs did you play at?
Well, early when I was playing full time, it was the supper clubs, like I said, Anna Reno's, the Tropics, Sup Miller's, all the Holiday Inns. There was probably about 5 different Holiday Inns we'd rotate around. We'd head up north. There were some restaurants and places up there, up northern Ohio, that we'd play. And it was a pretty good rotation, and we stayed pretty busy. Now, I'm in 5 different bands or projects, so it's the wineries, or it's the clubs like the Phone Booth, the Brick, places like that with the rock bands. So, yeah, it's kind of changed.
So would you say the overall community back then for like club managers and promoters, they were all more accepting and would really like push to get you guys in the door, or it was kind of a cutthroat kind of environment?
Well, food always came first.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a restaurant and a supper club, so those kind of places, food is first, and if there's anything that has to be cut or anything that's going wrong, it's the entertainment.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think music is always kind of secondary. And a lot of times, unfortunately, it's the first thing to be blamed. And maybe sometimes rightfully so. Kind of depends on the whole situation. But you have to be good. You have to be prompt. You have to be concerned. You have to care about the product that you're putting out.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of music going on right now. A lot of good music going on. I don't think it's cutthroat. I don't see that going on now.
Let's see. So what were some of your favorite bands growing up, but then also during your career, and even today?
Well, growing up, there was a local band and a local singer that I loved and adored and wanted to be exactly like, and that was Trudy of Trudy and the Hopple Street Exit. They played at a place in Salem Mall called Tijuana Lounge. She also played at the Forum with Lonnie Davis and that group. And I used to sneak in before I was old enough just to see her and sat in awe of her whole persona, her voice, her dress, the way she presented herself, the songs she sang, and I thought, I want to be like that. Well, you can't be like that. You have to be, what you are. But I was mesmerized by her. I would listen to people, back in my era, it was people like Leslie Gore, Petula Clark, Joni Mitchell, people like that I listened to. And I think Joni Mitchell really inspired me to go pursue some writing. Ricky Lee Jones, Laura Nyro, into the writing aspect.
Did you ever have a fan club or a big
The
following?
Stone Kitties fan club,
Stone
and I will
Kitties.
invite you to join if you'd like.
Okay.
No, I haven't. I
Is
do
there,
not.
is there a membership fee?
No, I pay you.
Oh, okay. Cool. What would you say was the high point or greatest success of your musical career?
Well, I think being able to do the recordings was certainly a lot of hard work, but it was rewarding to see those projects through. Got to work with some really good musicians, and that's something that I'll leave. Also working with some great musicians. When I was working at Ann Arena's Supper Club, I got to work with Dave Carpenter, very well-known bassist from the Dayton area who has since passed away. But he went on to play with, in fact, I think I made some notes about Dave. He went on to work with Buddy Rich. He moved out to the West Coast, recorded with everybody, Barbra Streisand, just everybody who is anybody. And I remember he worked at Ann Arena's for a while, and he would share his knowledge with me. And that's, I think, another sign of a great musician when they say, hey, let's try this, or do you know you can do this kind of voicing on this chord, or we can do this as an intro. He was very sharing with his knowledge. And when he said he was leaving to go work with somebody else on the road, somebody famous, how could you? But, you support him because he was a great player and he deserved everything that, all the best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those were high points, I think.
How far did you get to travel in your career? Did you go around the U.S., certain tri-state area?
Mainly tri-state area. Still do.
Mm-hmm.
I think the furthest we went was maybe Syracuse, New York,
Mm-hmm.
Detroit, Michigan.
Could you tell any differences in the music scenes from where, like, when you traveled outside of Dayton?
Not really.
Different than,
Because those were like Holiday Inns, and it's a lot different when you're playing those kind of clubs. It's kind of like a cookie cutter